the fire alarm test went off, but so far nothing. So if if there is a loud noise on Teams, we're just waiting for the fire alarm test to finish, but there's no sign of it at the moment. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to this multi-location meeting of the Culture, Connection and Place Scrutiny Committee on the 11th of July 2025. I'm just trying to see, you can't really see me on the camera, sorry Tom, sorry. I am Councillor Sean Pierce, who'll be chairing the meeting today. We're in the presentation room in the Civic Centre, so yeah, slightly different technology. As usual, could everyone please ensure their phones are switched to silent during the meeting? I'm going to just actually check mine because I haven't. There we go. And in addition, those on home on Teams, could you please raise your electronic hand if you wish to speak, and I will be keeping an eye on this for any speakers. Another reminder, as usual as well, for people online, your obligation to have your camera switched on during the meeting, please, so you can be seen and heard. And before we start, for the benefit of members at home and for the recording, Tom's just going to read out which members and officers are present in the room today. So over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of members present today, we have Councillors Paddison, Wolford, Hurley and Reynolds. And in terms of officers today, we've got Carly Davis, Darren Evans, James Davis, Anna Harvard, Simon Brennan and Nick Lipius. Myself, obviously.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. So we'll now move on to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. If any members have any declarations, could you please let us know?
See no declarations, Chair.
Thank you. As usual, if you realise during an item that you need to declare, just pop your hand up and we can deal with it then. That's no problem. So we'll move on now straight into the business for today's meeting. So our first item is item 4A, which is the Levelling Up Fund verbal update. So I believe there's a presentation to be shared for this one, Tom. So we're just going to get that shared, and if you could let us know when that appears for those at home, be really good. We can see it here in the room.
Yeah, we've got it.
Fantastic, thank you. Simon, are you taking this one?
Yeah, I think it'll be a combination of myself and Chris.
Go ahead.
So, as members will be aware, we've got 3 left projects at the moment, effectively. The one in the Neath is the corridor, if you like. The one then in Port Talbot, covering the Civic Centre and the work outside, which I'm sure you've all been disturbed by as you came into the building. And then also the third project, which is slightly different to the other 2, is the transport project, which revolves around the Newbridge Road Bridge. That one is in a slightly different position insofar as we're on site with the Neath visitor project and with the Civic Centre project and Square. But the other project then on Newbridge Road Bridge is really only for the design stage at this stage. So we've only been given a limited amount of funding on that one, and that one is being progressed then by James and his team. So in terms of the presentation, Chris, I don't know whether you want me to sort of run through this, or do you want to go one for the visitor attraction in the
happy for you to lead it, and I'll pitch in where needed, son.
Okay, so as you can see there on the slide, split into the overview there of the different sections which I've just gone through, so we can probably skip on to the next one, I think. So the Knoll scheme, which is progressing really well, and Chris and myself were there last week or the week before last with some of the members, I think. We got to have a good look around, and we had a little bit of sort of not kickback, but people asking, you know, why would you progress this in terms of the visitor centre, for example? A lot of people saying, well, the old visitor centre was fine. I don't understand why you've done anything different. I think for those members who went up there last week, they'll clearly see why it's very different to the original project. Yeah, I think it's a significantly different offer. It's a much better offer, I think, for engaging with the public, and critically, I think from our point of view as well as an authority, I think it'll be a much more sustainable offer going forward. So, you know, with all of our parks and and facilities, we tend to put a little bit of subsidy into them. And part of that is that we struggle to get a secondary spend out of people because the facilities are either quite tired or they don't really meet that need. I think what we've got here is a much different offer that can hopefully allow that facility to become much more sustainable going forward. So as you can see there, it's split into several sections: improving the visitor offer, consolidating the key heritage features. And I know that we had long discussions about those and how many of those we could include. And there will be elements, unfortunately, that are not covered within this project that could well form part of a phase 2 or a phase 3 going forward, because we'll have some of the infrastructure around it to make that a more viable offer. So developing the play offer as well, because obviously that's a key part of getting people into the park. And also, and I know I can see Carly at the end, and she'll love this bit, is the interpretation bit, which Carly's very wedded to. So we need to make sure that people understand what went on in the park and why they're there and all the facilities within it. And the last element there, which is the refurbishment of Pond Cottage, to create a 5-star self-catering holiday cottage. We had a wander around that last week as well, and that looks really good. And hopefully that will be really popular going forward. Next slide.
Simon, can I? Sorry,
Yeah.
just to add on the play side, it's worth just pointing out that the new sort of adventure park, the additional facilities that are going in for the sort of the older children is funded via the Levelling Up Fund scheme. That will leave the smaller park just to the side of the visitor centre as it was for the moment. There are plans to redo that at some stage, but we've just got to wait for the Section 106 monies to top up and some schemes to start. But we've got a scheme in place, ready to go, ready to do. We're just not doing it. So the visitor centre will open. That park won't be done at that point. It will come within the next few months.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So just very briefly on the Knoll, in terms of progress, as I said earlier, making really good progress. We're looking to be complete by September of this year. The visitor centre is already wind and watertight. The cascades are complete and they were running when we were there last week. Pond Cottage, most of the work there is being completed. That'll be done by the end of this month. The adventure playground, the planning for that, which was a little bit of a hiccup for us, has now been all sorted, and that'll be completed by the end of the programme as well. So we're currently within budget, total project cost of just over 12 mil. And of that, then you can see the funding there, which is in terms of the grant award from LEF, which was 10.8, some match funding from us of 1.2, and then some SPF funding. I don't know if you want to run the video there, Tom. I'm going to push that over to you because that's a technological thing. Just got to press the button at the bottom, I think.
Sounds good.
I think just to give you an update
from one of the teams. I think because he's sharing the presentation and it's opened in another window now, isn't it?
Good point.
Bear with us a second.
I think it's useful just to see the video because it's a really good update of where we are.
Sorry, Sean, can I come in as well? It's okay.
Yeah.
Again, visited up there, absolutely brilliant. And again, because I'm following the Knoll, the amount of media stuff you're doing as well, which has raised the profile. I'm picking up, obviously there's going to be way more interaction with the local schools because it gives a better offer. The amount of additional trails there, which is bringing people in. I know Neath Antiquarians are up there on Monday. So the two Chris have done a great job of sort of including everyone in, and the amount of additional offer, heritage, leisure, it's absolutely brilliant. So a great job being done.
Certainly, thank you. We'll see this video and then we'll continue. Yeah, thanks for sorting that out for us, Tom. If you can just pop the presentation back on, I think it'd be ideal. Should we pause for questions on the Knoll project at this point? Is that okay?
Yep.
I don't know if anyone, Laura, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have two, one around the cottage and then one around the visitor centre itself.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
just a little bit more information about the cottage. How would that be advertised and how would people be able to book that? And then in terms of the money generated from that, does it go back into the park itself or the wider council? And then my second one is just around the visitor centre and what sustainable measures have been built into that building itself.
Thanks, Laura. Probably questions for Chris, but
Yeah, so in terms of the cottage, I'll let Darren pick that up in terms of how we're going to market that, because that links up with the Margam cottage, if that's okay. Sorry, Laura. The other question is about the budget, wasn't it? So the Knoll currently regularly overspends its budget, so it doesn't operate within its means at this moment in time. The budget is somewhere, I think it's about 70 or 80,000 pounds a year subsidy, so it regularly overspends against that. We are pretty confident that now with the changes we've got, we'll be able to live within our means, and actually as we grow that business, we should be able to remove some of that subsidy over the next year or two as we get a bit closer, and actually as the budget starts to shape over the next few months. I think that's what you'll start to see. You'll start to see some sums go in for future years against that. In terms of the sustainable around the building, I haven't got the details. I don't know whether you know that, got an answer to that, Simon, have you?
I haven't off the top of my head, sorry. We can get you some of the sustainable. I mean, it's all been developed in that way, so we can get you some of that detail if you would like that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
As far as operation, and the proposal is originally when there was a number of more units, we were going to run it in house, but because of being one and the cost of running, we decided to go down the same as Ivy Cottage at Margam Park. So there's a specialist letting company called holidaycottages.co.uk we work with, and the plan is to work with them and lease it out there. They also cross-sell with everything in the county borough, so if there's no availability anywhere looking for local, they'll automatically try and put work our ways. And as I said, the budget, everything goes against the total costs. When Margam generates a profit from all its operating costs, and the same goes against the total costs of the park subsidy wise on there. We're looking at the end of the month building work completions. As soon as we get handover, then we will re-kit it out, and then we got to go through the process with Visit Wales and Holiday Cottage of getting it star rating, which we're aiming at a 5-star. Do a couple of test events, so we are certainly hoping by the end. The target at the moment is to try and get it by the end of the bank holiday August weekend. Get the first customers in.
Okay, great, sounds good. Anything to come back on with that, Laura?
No, that's great. Thank you both.
Excellent. Any other questions from members?
Just more of a comment, Chair.
Yeah,
Listen, I understand we need to raise money, but I know there will be comments from locals who say, I can't afford to rent that. That's going to be 5-star. So we've got a council-owned park with the facilities that we're spending on, and yet, so it's just a comment that it won't sit well with I understand the need, but it won't sit well with some people. We will have comments to say, well, I'm a resident of this county borough, I can't afford that. So just comment.
Then, Jeremy, did you want to just come in?
Yeah, no expert, but on the sustainability side, I know there's solar on the roof. I know that the main structural panels and things have come from So Modeler. So it's going to be, the whole building is a green segment that it comes under. So
Yeah.
It's going to be airtight, so it's going to be as efficient as possible.
We'll
Yeah.
get a full spec on it.
Yeah. So the other one is that I think whereas the old centre was running off a cesspit, this has now got full connection to a mains as well, which should be more efficient. And I think they've increased the power supply into it as well. So there's lots. Anyway, they could have modified them better if they've done it.
Okay, fantastic. Just a couple of comments from me and a question as well. I mean, I visited the the park recently, and I've seen some of the work, and it is fantastic. I walked up the Cascades and yeah, had a really good look around, and I think you know, there's a couple of really interesting touches there, isn't it? They're going to get people to come back that maybe haven't visited in a long time. I mean, the Nollywood sign is quite fun, and that's had a good bit of
That's a really good
social media, and again, that's a nice touch, isn't it, to kind of broaden the appeal of the park, which is lovely. And I mean, the other thing that's not really been mentioned is the bridge link into the Brunei Woods as well, which opens up a huge section of the park. And I think we probably need to think about how we, you know, share that and explain that to people, because I think you can miss that, can't you, in terms of the walk-in opportunities and the landscape that opens up. Just in terms of a question for me, in terms of the scope of the project, I know originally it was a wider scope, and we sort of, you know, had to shrink it back within the cost envelope and everything else. What I'm curious about is to what extent maybe did we scope out some of those other things? I know we must obviously we did a bit of work to understand some of the feasibility, haven't we, of some of those other items, and I'm just curious really where we're at with some of those. If there was future funding, have we actually developed some of these elements out to a reasonable degree? So I think that'd be interesting for me to know, and I'm sure the committee would be interested in that in terms of how ready we would be to move on in another phase.
Oh, sorry.
No, you go first. It was a different question. Sorry.
I mean, there isn't, as far as I know, there isn't a LUF project that I'm aware of which hasn't been descoped in some way. Everybody started off with this because we were putting them in at breakneck speed, and so everyone started with a reasonably sized project, and has just had to trim bits off to get back within budget. Partly as well because construction inflation has been running rife, as you know, over the last few years, but also because there wasn't enough work done up front on these things to understand fully in terms of costs. And as with projects like this, you start to get into costs. If you remember at the beginning of this, we were only refurbishing the original visitor centre, and it was only when we started getting into the costings and we said, well, actually, there's very minimal difference between refurbishing the existing and potentially developing a new facility that would be far more useful and provide far more, I think, benefit for the community, but also make it more sustainable for the park. So that's when we switched halfway through. So some things were taken out of scope. As you know, with the visitor accommodation, we were going to put these pods in just around Bond Cottage. Bond Cottage we originally had in as a sort of cafe type facility. As we flip things around a little bit to make sure that we've got the best offer we can possibly get to within that budget. We've done some of the work on some of the other projects. So things like if we suddenly found there was money available, and funny enough, we had UK Gov up with us when we did the visit the other day, and they loved the project when we were walking around, so it was fantastic. We're very interested in getting a ministerial visit because it's the sort of thing that they want to be attached to, and said, well, what did you take out? And we explained that we'd taken out the pods, and they said, oh, that's a shame. You know, it'd be really good to get funding for that in the future, wouldn't it? And we said, yeah, it'd be great. just in case you have anything. So, you know, we are in that position where we have some other projects lined up now, ready to go. And there's some more things, isn't there? We looked at doing the cellars originally, and that was taken out as well because it just wasn't affordable. So there's a number of different offers in there that we could potentially progress as we go forward.
Tony?
Yeah, so just to add to that. So when we put the original project together, before it even became the final bid, what we got out of that is everything that Simon has said, but it was kind of like a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5 over the next 10 to 20 years, what things could and should be addressed across the park. And some of those things can be picked up in kind of maintenance kind of work. And like Simon said, there are other things that are really good projects in future that have been scoped out to a small level, but we also know then that if investment or funding comes along again, there are things that would then be prioritised to lead on from that. So just to point out, yes, there's a much bigger list, even a much bigger list than what went into the original.
Yeah, there was a master plan as well, wasn't there?
Yeah.
That sort of went into this bid that was done prior, wasn't it?
For the whole of the heritage corridor right up the valley.
Okay, I'm just going to bring Chris in because he's had his hand up for a little while, and because we move on.
So I just wanted to go back to Councillor Patterson's point actually around local people. So whilst we're looking to build a new audience up there, whilst we're looking to bring new people to experience the Knoll and improve some of those services, we are incredibly aware of the sort of community pride and that local regular audience that uses the park. And we don't want to be pricing them out, and we don't want to be pushing them out. So Chris Pugh, the site manager up there, is doing a piece of work at the moment around things like pricing around particular times of the day that might attract and might benefit the local residents a bit more, for example, and those types of things. So I haven't got a sort of a final solution on that one yet, but we are aware of it, and it is something that we are very mindful of making sure that we get right.
Thanks, Chris. That's a really important point. Suzanne, did you have any?
Yeah, just wanted to know, because wasn't on the committee time. Was it ever looked at to put any solar panels in the car park, that type of thing, or is that way too expensive? Because I only just grazed through Facebook this morning, and there is a growing feeling in not just our community, nationwide, that we should be putting things in where they're not at the moment, and it wouldn't cause much harm, but obviously the cost has got to be considered as well. So was there a scheme ever thought of?
Yeah, I think as Councillor Hurley mentioned earlier, there's some solar in there, bits and pieces. So as I say, that'll come out on the full spec. We'll issue a sort of a brief version of the full spec. We won't give you a spec thing because I'm sure we'd be bored to death with that, but with the highlighted points in it, just so members are aware of the sustainable.
So at the moment, it's only in the visitor centre rather than.
I don't think there's anything on Pond Cottage in terms of solar. I'm not sure it's listed.
Yeah, it's listed.
It's listed.
Yeah, there's no.
No, I mentioned car parks.
Yeah, go
ahead.
Yeah, I know that we've a number of years ago we sort of worked up a scheme or a potential feasibility scheme in relation to putting canopies in the car park and then having the renewable the PV panels on the canopies to actually then provide power to the vehicles parked under those canopies. But you've got to do a business case to demonstrate that the investment that you make is viable, so you get a return on that investment, which makes it a something that's worth doing. And at that particular time, it wasn't stacking up financially, so we were actually having to spend more money than we were going to get in terms of return on that investment. So it didn't stack up. But we've got business cases for various different energy projects throughout the county borough that we keep revisiting depending on the electricity prices.
That's great,
because it changes all of the time.
I'm grateful for that, Chair. Thank you.
There we are. Just got in mind for the landscape as well. Somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Jeremy.
No, go on.
No, I'm just going to explain as well as the space in the Knoll as well. We are quite actively keeping it because we did a sample first event of a food festival last week. There's no venue went. And we were running out of car parking space. So although some days it looks as if there's not much, we are filling the car parks and the grass areas up as much as we can to attract more visitors. So we're trying to balance out, the opportunities to attract visitors as well as the green space.
Anything else, Jeremy?
Yeah, no, a couple of things. So there is solar on the roof on the visitor centre. Again, I said about the new connection they put in. They put the new connection, I think, just to power, so that there is car recharging up there. So that meant National Grid putting in a small substation in as well to increase the thing. The other one regarding us using solar elsewhere, I know that we featured in one of the Welsh Gov best practice that's just come out where they picked it down in the Keys, where we put exactly what Susan was talking about, the canopies to charge the vehicles down the Keys. Lastly, on the Knoll as well, it's just a big thanks for the additional work. I don't know who's involved, possibly the two Chris's, but the food festival, as Darren just said, brilliant, well attended. The other one is they had the Tree of Many Faces, which was a bad news story because they had to cut it down, and now they've reversed that and made it. They put carvings on it, and suddenly now that's a whole new attraction. And when I said about the school visits, that's where the school were going in, the storytelling around the tree, and absolutely fantastic. And outside the left, that's just done by the people and the officers in the park. And obviously, but sorry, great stories all around the night.
Absolutely, great. Okay, we'll move on with the presentation now. Got a few more topics to cover and another agenda item. So, but thanks everyone for the questions and discussion there. So we'll just pick up.
Sorry. That one there. Yeah, so there's just some pictures there. On the left-hand side, you've got the pond cottage and the internals on that. On the right-hand side there, you can just about see the sort of aspect you'll get from the first floor over the lake, which we didn't have before. The lake was probably something that you only just saw when you walked around it. So that'll be a much, much better offer then. Okay. Just a couple more pictures there and of the cascades, etc. So the next slide. Okay, so moving on to the next one then, waterfall country, Neath. As many of you will know, we had a few problems with this one initially. We had a very reluctant landowner there who we spent long periods of time negotiating with in different ways. And it was very challenging, I should probably say. We did get to a point in the end where we thought that that part of the scheme might have to be deleted. But in the end, we had some additional time from UK Gov, and that allowed us then to re-look at that, because we had the ability potentially to go to a CPO if he didn't play ball. And eventually he did. I'm sure he'll do very well out of it, but that's the way that life works. So we had an enhanced visitor gateway project there, really, with a couple of facilities within it. The key problem up there for us in Neath over a number of years has been car parking. The parking is indiscriminate. It's across people's driveways, in people's driveways, blocks up the road, means emergency vehicles struggle to get through, farm vehicles struggle to get through. And so it's been a real headache for us for probably the better part of 10 years. We put in a lay-by about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little bit more, but that dealt with part of the problem, but certainly didn't deal with all of the problem. So we knew we had to put something in there. We'd done a long piece of work where, and in conjunction with the Brecon Beacons National Park, around different opportunities, but it really came down to this one site in Neath and was the only one close to Scrutiny Gladys, which could function as a car park. To make that work, we needed to put things around it. But the way that funding works with UK Gov, you can't just put a car park in. That doesn't work. That doesn't make the business case stack up. So we had accommodation, and there's a bit of a shop there, etc. And critically, some new toilet facilities, because even though we refurbished the existing toilet facilities there about 7 years ago, 8 years ago,
Wow.
is it 10 or 12? God, it's that long ago. So that long ago. And although they were refurbished and we did stuff around the DDA part of it, it means there's not enough facilities there for people coming to the area. We were having long queues and it really wasn't functioning in the way that it should. So the other point, we had some consultation sessions with the locality, and one of the things that they asked for was play facilities, because that was it didn't have many of those in the area. So again, we've included that within the design, and that is a key feature then for people, both for visitors coming to the park, but also for locals who want to use the facility. So we've just got on site at the end of June. It's a 52-week contract. We're working hard with the contractor to deliver that. We've done a number of sort of initial works to allow the landowner to access his other land in the area, etc., and doing fencing and bits and pieces. We have been slightly delayed there because I think it's swallows, is it? Nesting in one of the barns, which means that we can't take it down. But we're working around that, and hopefully that won't delay the project in any way. You can see the total project costs there and the figures associated with that. And to make it stack up, we've put an additional bit of SPF funding into it to make sure that will work. Yeah, as I said earlier, it's swallows nesting in the barn, which have delayed us slightly. And some consultation with Welsh Water, who initially said that the pipe was fine, and then have come back in and said, no, you need to do additional work around this. And so we'll end up doing their work for them. as you can see, there's not as much progress on this one as there was on the Knoll project, because the Knoll project was within our control. We owned the site, etc. And that was a big part of where we were with the luff bids. And people ask why you didn't do this part, or why you didn't do something else over here. What we found, and what everyone else has found, is that anything not within your control is very difficult to deliver within the timescales that UK Gov are giving you to deliver the project. So Ponnet Vacan for us has been a challenge and nearly fell out of the scheme. But obviously with things like the Knoll, and also with the theatre here, we're on site on the theatre before we were on site in the Knoll. That's been a lot easier to take forward. Okay, so moving on to the Talbot project, which I'm sure you've all just seen as you walked into the building. There were three sort of key elements around that. One was the refurbishment of the theatre, which has been largely untouched since '87 when we built the building. Has had its challenges in terms of operating. Probably wasn't designed in the right way in the first place, but there's nobody left to take responsibility for that. So we will refurbish it in the way that it should be done now, and we're dealing with a couple of key problems, like some technical things, like you couldn't get across backstage, for example. So that's why we got the extension on the back. We didn't have sufficient toilets to function at that level. So we've put new toilets in on the side of it, and we've also put disabled access so that people can get to the first and second floors. So a lot of things that critically were wrong with the facility, we've addressed within this, but also in terms of refurbishing the space, again, to make it more viable and sustainable going forward, and to allow Chris and the team and Darren to really use it for different things. I think we can enter the conference market a lot better now, because we've got a number of facilities around that, and linked into the project as well, because we're dealing with everything to the right-hand side of the building as you see it. So the sort of civic functions as well. So all of that will be refreshed within this project and made more usable and more meaningful, I think, for the ways that we've developed the use of that space in the last 40 years. I mean, there isn't a building constructed in the 80s that hasn't needed to be changed to meet current requirements. And I think that's critical for both members and officers, but also for the public who really want to use the building. The square as well hasn't been touched since that time, all done at the same point. So that will be developed into more of a multi-use community space and introducing a bit more green infrastructure into it. The third element was Riverside. That part of it, unfortunately, we've taken out of the project for two reasons. One, the principal reason was around cost. It just meant that we had to put an extra sort of £2.5 million of our money into the project, and that wasn't feasible at this stage. So we've had to delete that from the project. The other issue was that we were having some discussion with the college around relocating into the town centre. They've now decided they don't want to do that. They want to go down onto the harbour side area where they were originally wanting to go. We thought there was a better offer for them to be embedded within the town centre. That would have certainly helped us in terms of rejuvenating our town centre, and because a huge amount of footfall with upwards of 1,000 students and nearly 180 staff, I think, but also visitors to and from it. But we couldn't get that to work for them. Unfortunately, they didn't want to do it. So that's the other reason. What we didn't want to do was do the Riverside project and then revisit it. We'll still be looking at that block there around the post office, because as some of you know, the post office have announced their intention to leave that facility. So that makes that block pretty difficult, I think, for the landlords. And re-lettings are going to be a struggle. As you know, the pub is still burnt out shell at the back end. So it's not really what we want our town centre to be. And so we thought that the college project was perfect for that, but that ship has sailed, unfortunately.
So,
yeah. So we're currently on site, as you can see. We've stripped out the theatre itself, and there's work going on there. It's a very kind of complex project because we're working within the town centre, and it ends up with, I think, 7 different phases, particularly around how we do the external works, etc., because we've got to keep access to the building. We have said continue the project it means the left-hand side of the building, which is the civic side that we're in now, is not a part of this project. That has to be looked at after this, and has to be funded in a different way. And that is something that we're working on and we'll bring to members in due course. You can see the project costs there, upwards of 18 million, of which we've had to put in just over 3 million. We managed to squeeze some additional funding out of Welsh Government as well, of 270. Some pictures there. We don't have any video at this stage, but some pictures there of you can see how different the theatre is starting to look, and hopefully, I think the transformation there will be pretty impressive in the same way as it is with the visitor centre in Pontyffycn, in the North. Sorry. So the third element, and I don't know if James wants to come in on this possibly, is around Newbridge Road, and I know that is a particularly important project for particularly the members in that area, and was part of the safe travel and the active travel routes to try and link all of that together. I don't know if James, if you want to give sort of update on where we are on that.
Yeah, I'm assuming all members are aware of the scheme and the scope of the scheme. So where we are at present is we've had the funding from the Gov, so there's £800,000 for design development. So that's been undertaken this year. So with the consultants, working closely with the consultants at the moment, they're undertaking ecological surveys. So they're doing that whole design development package. Looking to finish that around February, March time, early next year. At the same time, we've been chasing Department for Transport for updates in terms of future level of funding for this scheme. And we've actually had something back this morning with the wording that we received, thanking us for our email, but they informed us at present we're unable to provide any further detail and expect more information regarding Neath to be made available shortly. So we are hopeful within the next few weeks we will have something and some confirmation that we can actually then take that forward. What I would say is, and Sean, as you know, it's that scheme is included in the Regional Transport Delivery Plan.
Yeah. So
if failing, we don't get any funding, future funding for its construction, this design work, it won't go to waste. Now it is listed as one of the schemes in the Regional Transport Delivery Plan, and then there's that whole question and range of questions around grants modernisation and transport funding, and what that's going to look like. But that will then potentially be delivered regionally going forward.
Great, thank you. On those three schemes, are there any questions from members on the schemes?
Pontyffycn, first off. It's a regular visit for us because it's one of the nearer places when you're coming over from GCG over the top of the valleys, and great place to walk dogs. I wondered, has there been much, what's the consultation with the existing pubs and facilities there like? How have they responded to the development? Two, swallows are, they're declining and we're seeing less. So is there alternative accommodation? Is there something being done to make sure those nesting swallows this year don't find themselves homeless because they tend to come back to the same area next year and evicted? And the third one is the path can be challenging. The more visitors, the more challenging, especially up near the waterfall, the first set, and wobbling on the side of the path, hanging on to a tree while somebody else comes past you is not unknown. We tend not to go. It's nice to have a car park there because we tend not to go during the visitor times because you can't park. So you stay away and let them enjoy it, and then you go in the autumn and the winter, whatever. But is there any work to be done on the path itself?
I'll leave the path to Callie. Or do you want to come in the path first then, Callie?
Yeah, so paths and the consultation, if that's okay. So first on consultation, we're in regular contact with Scrutiny Gladys. Nick, the project manager, is in regular contact with the Angel Inn. We actually held one of the consultation events there. And the White Horse, which is just so slightly over the border. They were invited to that consultation. Now, I can't remember for the life of me if they actually came. I'm sorry, but we do have a list somewhere. But they have had the opportunity to consult both online, so questionnaire, and face-to-face through 3 consultation events which were held in the community when we were first looking at delivering the project. One in Neath, one in Scrutiny, and then one over in the village hall on the Powys side as well. On the pathway, we have worked previously with Brecon Beacons and Bannerbechainiog National Park. There's been an audit done of the trails across waterfall country. We're working on a project with Brecon Beacons. They applied to Shared Prosperity Fund last year to do pathway improvements along the stretch of path leading from our path, so the Angel Inn, up to the bridge. We ended up needing to take over the projects. They didn't have capacity because it got quite a lot more complicated when we found there's an area of erosion on that pathway. The councillors then agreed to back up the SPF funding, so that if we lost the SPF funding by the end of the programme, we would still have funds to carry forward the design work. That did happen in that there were complications. So we had a design in place to address an area of erosion on that pathway. There was an issue in that NRW wouldn't accept the design solution that Carl and your team had put forward. We're still working through that design solution. In the meantime, we put an application into Visit Wales's Brilliant Basic scheme to apply for funding to do pathway improvements, which included the area of erosion. That application was unsuccessful, but it was highly competitive. We did have another successful application for the Markham Park entrance way. So we will keep chipping away at that. Brecon Beacons had a successful application from Visit Wales to do the upper sections of that pathway, but not the lower sections. So actually, it would have been a little bit the cart before the horse, because what we need to do is get the approval in place from NRW for the designs of addressing that area of erosion first. But it will be a priority for us because we will have the designs and the scope available to apply for the funds that come along to improve that area pathway. But it is very much a priority, and it is something that the community identified as a priority as part of the proposal, although it's not straightforward because, like you say, the very nature of waterfall valleys are that they are carved out by the rivers and therefore are slightly unstable on the edges. There's a similar problem in Milling Cove at the moment that the Countryside and Wildlife team are with to address.
Thank you.
And I think the third point was around the ecology. This project, in the same way as all of our other projects, all of the team that my side of the world work closely with the ecology team on Kerry's side of the world to make sure whatever is there is dealt with properly, and there will be people there monitoring that, etc. So whatever the specialists have decided we need to do will be done as part of the project.
Thank you.
No, it's just in reflection of what we're doing properly. I got contacted by work that was going on that was not done properly, which involved the police for disturbing nesting birds. So yeah, we are doing it properly, others aren't. So.
Thank you. Councillor Dacey, Andrew.
Thank you, Sean. It's just a time scale for Newbridge Road. That's all I was asking there. If I missed it, when the work is likely to start, and is the procurement of local engineering firms going to be used? Because obviously they are lacking some work now due to the steelworks, AVN being closed. There's plenty of engineering firms locally. I was wondering if we're going to try to employ them.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. So in terms of the first point, around the timescales, it's difficult. We are waiting for that feedback from DFT in terms of whether we're going to get future funding going forward to take it to construction. If not, then it will fit in with the Regional Transport Delivery Plan, and we're going through a whole prioritisation process with the region at the moment with that. So very difficult for me to give you any timescales, especially if it isn't successful, in terms of obtaining that funding going forward. And in terms of the procurement of the contractor, then for that, that'll go through our usual frameworks, but there are obviously local contractors involved on those frameworks.
Okay. Just one from me on that and Newbridge Road. I mean, we've had a lot of emails similar to that from DFT, haven't we, over the last more than a year now, I think Christmas time we'll have an update in January, then it was the spring budget, and then it was July. So I am hoping that we at least get some clarity on what's happening. It is welcome we've had the 800,000 to complete the detailed design work, because a lot of work has gone into this already, over the last number of years now. One of the questions I've got around some of the preparatory works is, I know we've got land acquisition to do, and that can be quite the a difficult element of these projects. I'd be interested to understand if we're any further along with the land acquisition on this project, because I wouldn't like it to fall down on that element, given that actually the delay in getting the construction funding may help us to complete some of the land negotiations. And just the last point, just to pick up on what Andrew said, I think the only slightly complicated thing with this project is, with it being a grade 2 listed bridge, what we've found over the last couple of years is you've got to find specialist contractors who've got the right accreditations to design heritage structures as well, which is really limited, I think, over the last few years now, who can take on that work and their capacity to do that work as well. So that's just something I think we need to bear in mind, Andrew, in terms of contractors. There's probably going to be a limit to in terms of the specialism of the work as to who could do it. But if there's an update on the land acquisition and the rest of that, that'd be great.
Just going back in terms of the original bid, was put through on round 2 of the levelling up fund process, and we were unsuccessful. And then out of the blue, we were advised that we'd been successful in round 3, which nobody knew existed, for New Bridge Road Bridge and for the theatre. The problem that we had at that particular point in time was that MHCLG, which is Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, were responsible for the vast majority of the levelling up funds, and were fairly flexible with us. We had regular meetings, and they were fairly flexible for us to start work more or less straight away. The transport bids, however, were managed by the Department for Transport in UK Government, and they would not let us do anything until we were given the go-ahead from them formally. We were advised when we were chasing for updates as to when we were going to get the memorandum of understanding in place, which is what we had to have before we could start. We were continually told, yes, it's coming. Then we were told in advance of the spending review that we would have the funding to do the detailed design and the land acquisition. And then a couple of weeks after we were told that, we were then told, no, actually, you're only going to get money for the design stage. You're not going to get money for the land acquisition, and wait for further information after the spending review. So as James has indicated, we've been chasing, we've been really making a nuisance of ourselves to find out what is going on, because the spending review is concluded. And they basically said, just wait, there'll be announcements shortly. So we don't have money for the land acquisition at the moment, only for the design. So we can't acquire land without funding. We are going to continue to pester. Simon and I were in a meeting just before this one with the local government, WLGA, Welsh Local Government Association, and they were talking about the LUF and the SPF successor funds and how they are likely to look. It's not what we anticipated, and there's very little detail at the moment. But they may well be putting some form of LUF opportunity, future LUF opportunity in place, but we don't know the timing, we don't know the detail, and we don't know the sum of money. So I don't know whether or not there'll be an announcement associated with the new LUF process in the next couple of months, but my understanding is it's been delayed slightly because of the devolved nature of some of the funding programmes. So UK government officials are working with Welsh government officials. So that's probably not giving you clarity, because we are in the dark as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. It has been quite a frustrating process. Just a point of clarity from me. I appreciate we've not had money to complete land acquisition, but have we been engaging in the negotiations with the landowners in terms of progressing that process?
Yeah, there's been some discussions. but obviously, Nick said you need the funding to take that forward. And, you know, whatever we put in place now could be different in a year's time. Obviously, there's a lot of work that's going to happen around the docks area, for example.
Yeah.
ABP were very clear that they wanted to engage with us, and it linked into a number of things around fencing and a number of other issues that came into play, really. But, you know, without that funding in place, we are a little bit hamstrung in terms of taking it forward.
Okay. Sonia?
Can I just pick a bit? I understand you only know what you know about the future of the funding. Do we have any clue whether it's coming via Welsh Government or whether it's coming direct to local authorities? You know, not at all. And you know, and whether it's going to be the 3 years promised or the, you know.
We have absolutely no idea. We are making a plea to MHCLG that the money is directed straight to the regions under the corporate joint committee, because we've got regional investment plans in place, which we've been utilising to deliver the SPF programme. It's been working really well. We've had really positive outcomes that we've been capturing to try and use for lobbying purposes. And we've been sort of making that clear. It's working. We've been able to do work in communities that we've never been able to do work in the past because of the strict criteria we've had with previous funding schemes.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want them to change what is currently in place. But you know, we'll continue to do that lobbying, but whether or not they will listen is another thing. So as soon as we get clarity, we will make sure that we make that available to members.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other indications on this item. I think we've had quite a good discussion on this, and I just want to thank members and officers for the contributions. This item's for monitoring, so therefore we note the report and we'll move on with the agenda now to the business plans. It's item 5. We have the business plans included within the agenda pack and a supplementary agenda item as well on ModGov, which includes the leisure business plans. Before I go to questions, does anyone want to add anything to the report? I know we've seen some of these business plans in our sort of forward programme meetings, but did any officers want to say anything? Should we just go straight to questions?
I've got nothing further to add, so I'm happy for members to go straight to questions.
We'll go straight to questions then, that's great. So my first indications from Councillor Sonia Reynolds.
Thank you, Chair. It's, you know, I like, you know, the business plans and the association with the strategy, and it gives, you know, more detail, more clarity as to what's happening where. My overarching concern is that when you divide things out, you know, that can mean that people don't talk to each other, things don't happen cross department, and we've been sort of promised there'll be better cross department working. So, you know, how is that and how does that work? And in one of the plans, I know that there's a mention of issues because of issues with cross department working. There's also between the plan from the education side of the leisure and culture areas, it's in a different format. So, you know, it hasn't got some of the aspects. It doesn't cover the cross-cutting goals. It doesn't look at the objectives in the same way as others. So it makes it difficult sometimes in that nature. And in the plans from your area, they've got those in, but most of the boxes aren't crossed at all and ticked. And I can go through and think, well, you know, there are areas within the cross-cutting where, you know, I can see that would impact on that and that and that, but that's not been done yet. Is that process still going forward for sort of monitoring through? Because I think these will be a key tool for committee to look at and monitor things going forward, and extremely useful. And the final point, desperately looking for my there. No. There's in the in plans about, I think it was page 18, 19. I had the machine turned off and I had it set up. That one. It was page 23, actually. I'm not sure whether building control fits under. I'm still getting my head around what's in this committee and what goes elsewhere. But for example, didn't work well. There's what didn't work well, but and the reasons are there. But is there any way we could consider having sort of this happened, it didn't work well, the impact of that is X, because it's about what is the overall impact of that going forward. There is some work to remedy it further on, but what would be the impact of those things would be nice to know as well. But it's a lot to read these plans, so you're looking for different things in different sections.
Yeah, I can cover the areas for my directorate, and hopefully Chris and others can cover the business plan for their service.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we were given a corporate template that we were advised to follow. I think there was flexibility if services wanted to deviate from that. But we chose to follow the template, and some of the information was populated for us by colleagues within finance, so the budget areas and the savings that we had to secure and whether we were on target to achieve them. They were already populated by our colleagues, and our corporate services team. So Louise McAndrew has been very helpful in providing information from corporate services into those business plans. So that's an example of collaboration there. But yeah, so we followed that template to ensure that we got a consistent approach within our directorate. In terms of the collaboration, there is a section within each of the plans under the Sustainable Development Principles section. So what we had to do is we had to identify whether there is a number of columns in that section covering 5 ways of working. So whether we were developing, moving towards mature, leading, etc. And we had to identify for each of the services whether we thought we were, in which area we were, whether we were mature, leading, etc. So the box has been ticked to explain where we think that we are in terms of each of those 5 ways of working. And the last column in that particular section asks for examples, so it's not an exhaustive list of where we have collaborated with other organisations. It just gives a number of examples. So just giving you a flavour, in the property and region plan, we've indicated about how we've collaborated in terms of the Tata transition work. For example, we've worked with third sector organisations, we've worked with UK government, Welsh government, the business, private sector in terms of engagement with businesses. So it's just an example. And then under the engineering and transport business plan, there's references to the coal tip safety work. We've been dealing with what used to be the Coal Authority, now the Mine Remediation Authority. So we've been working with them, and we were one of the pilot authorities that developed the new system for inspection of coal tips, which resulted in the additional, I think it's £118 million that was allocated to Wales under the recent spending review. So we were one of those pilot authorities that helped the Welsh Government to secure that way of working and that funding to ensure we are able to monitor and respond to any issues on the coal tips that we have in our area. So those are just examples. So it's not an exhaustive list, it's just examples. But I think we would be naive and to think that we can deliver everything alone. We don't deliver anything alone. We work with the private sector, with government departments, with academia in most things that we do, third sector as well, because we can't do it on our own. We have to work with others in order to deliver. In terms of the building control example, I think what didn't work well in the plan references recruitment. So we've got succession plans in place for all of our services within our directorate. We are working with the Future of Work team, which is within Sheena's service, to try and explore ways of securing recruits into posts. we've been successful in some of those posts, not so in some of the very hard to secure posts. So we're struggling with surveyors, architects, project managers, engineers, quite significantly. We've gone out recently with one of our surveyor posts 3 times, and we've not achieved any applications. Specifically with the building control service, they've gone out to advert a number of times and they've been unsuccessful. And what Paul in building control is trying to do now is to restructure the service, because it's pointless going out again and again and again for posts that there are no people out there to fill. So he's restructuring the service to try and approach the problem slightly differently. He's also got apprentices in post, and we're hoping to grow our own. So that it's not going to fix the here and now, but it'll hopefully fix the problem in the future. So we're looking at all those different opportunities to try and resolve the recruitment problems that we've got. So I think that possibly covers the areas in my...
Can I come back?
Yeah, before I bring Chris in, that's
It
fine.
was the impact I was concerned about. What are we behind in building control? I think I know the answer to that. Or, is there a delay? Are people experiencing delays? And the other side of that is I've noticed all the, and obvious excellent collaboration with external bodies. I was thinking about working within and the collaboration within that needs to happen. Some of the things that happen in your department are key to how the operation in other areas goes on. So, and that's not particularly mentioned in that section on collaboration.
We're working with colleagues across the piece. So Darren, Carly, Chris, the Left project is one example of where we're working together. And we're working with our employability colleagues in terms of the data transition work and trying to support businesses. So there's a huge number of examples of where we're working collectively, because we can't achieve it on our own. We were talking in the office yesterday about a decarbonisation plan, which will be coming before members in the not too distant future, together with a costed action plan. And one of the issues in relation to that is the decarbonisation net zero agenda seems to be historically being an environment responsibility, and it's not an environment directorate responsibility, and it's not our responsibility. It's a whole council approach. And to fix that, we have got an engagement officer. It doesn't sit in our directorate purposefully, because otherwise it would still be linked to our directorate, and that person sits within corporate services, and the role of that person is to engage externally with partners and to engage with directorates within the council, and not just our directorate. So we need to get the message out to all directorates. They all need to deliver this net zero agenda and not rely on the environment colleagues. So we're doing all of that, and we've further progressed in some areas than others. But we're definitely getting more engagement from other directorates. And as we said earlier on, in terms of Carly and Darren and Chris, we're working as a team. So we're not our team and their team, we're one big team to deliver this, because it's in all of our interests. It's a council initiative, not an environment directorate or a leisure service initiative. It is a council initiative.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola. Chris, did you have anything to add? I think there was a question around the structure of the business plan.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. So I think I'm sure members are aware, but this is the sort of the first year really that the template that the environment colleagues have used actually, I think, has been supplied corporately, and I'm sure it'll be tidied up and improved over the next few years. I'm very aware ours was submitted late to you for this committee. So we, as an education directorate, basically chose not to follow that route for this 1 year only, just simply because of the Estin inspection that we had. So that Estin inspection straddled the end of the financial year. And so we sat with the existing documents that we had for that period of time, and we just spent a bit of time updating them ready for you now, rather than rewriting completely new business plans. So that's the only reason. It was just that we sat there with that. We wanted to provide that consistency through Estin, and the intention is to move to this format for future years.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, it's just to say I fully understand the strain an inspection can put on. So, yes, thank you.
There we are. That's great. I just wanted to pick up on the cross-council working, because that was one of the things we discussed, wasn't it, in pre-brief? I mean, Nicola, you picked up the point that I sort of highlighted there was, you know, the decarbonisation item in the business plan, you know, lack of support from other directorates as an issue, you know, and I mean, you've talked a lot about successful cross-directorate working, but it doesn't always work well, does it? And I guess my kind of question that I had from that was, when there are issues like that, where do they go? Is there a mechanism for identifying issues of working across directorates and a sort of a forum for problem solving around that? Because it is something we discuss a lot actually in the council, isn't it? Siloed working and something that, you know, we're always trying to work on. And I'm just always conscious there's always good practice. And then there's those little niggly things that we can never quite get right. So just one question around that, because you mentioned you've got like an engagement officer, but that was specific, wasn't it, to that decarbonisation work, which I'm sure is going to help. But I just wondered, is there something that, you know, as a, you know, a corporate team where these things go? I don't know if you could give an insight to that, really.
I don't think there is a direct way of dealing with it, because each issue will be dealt with differently, isn't it? So we gave that example of the decarbonisation agenda. You know, if we have issues in relation to lack of engagement from a particular service, we try to deal with them, you know, with the relevant officers. So if there is somebody in Simon's team who's not getting engagement from social services, for example, we'll deal with it at that level. If it doesn't change, then we will escalate it up to SLT, where, you know, we will sort of deal with it quite seriously at that senior level if we're not getting any change in terms of lack of cooperation. So we do deal with those areas that way. We have got that self-assessment work that has been undertaken as well, because we're required to deliver that plan. And that talks about, and that has been sort of subject to discussion and at different tiers of officers throughout the council. And, you know, where officers have had to explain or assess what they've had from certain services. So have they, you know, what do they think of the digital services? What do they think of HR and so on? And that feedback is utilised to populate the self-assessment work that they're doing. But it is you know, something that we've raised recently as well, that depending on who you ask, you'll probably get a different answer. Because if I've got a digital problem where my computer is not playing ball, which is quite often the case because I'm not particularly IT savvy, you know, I can contact digital services and they'll probably give me support immediately. If you've got somebody possibly within the lower tiers of the organisation and they've got a problem with digital services, they won't necessarily get the response that I get, and that shouldn't happen. And I know that we give feedback in terms of that self-assessment process to ensure that the team who are doing that work are asking everybody those questions, because otherwise the information goes into it is slightly skewed. So, you know, so we are always questioning what's cross-directorate working is going on, whether it's working well, whether we're all getting support from our back office services in the way that we should do. So I've probably gone around the houses a little bit in terms of answering your questions, but we are constantly challenging other parts of the council to ensure that they're providing the service that we need. But we're also mindful that we are struggling financially, and all directorates are making cuts that they don't want to make. And those cuts do have an impact whether we like it or not. So sometimes it's a matter of managing our own expectations as well. But we are definitely working on it behind the scenes.
Okay, no, thanks, Nick. I think that was really useful just to kind of get a bit of that commentary, I suppose. And I mean, you know, it sounds like there's a lot of we know what we're aiming for, don't we? And I think the best intentions are there in, I think, almost all cases, actually. I suppose it is just that question, isn't it? Is there something structurally to make sure these things, a lot of custom and practice, oh yeah, well, okay, we'll do this and then we'll do that. Maybe there is a thought trail around formalizing actually when something should be escalated and when something shouldn't be escalated. But that's probably just how I'm thinking about it. I got an indication from Bob from Creek then, so I'm just gonna. It was around the LDP and the consultation around that, Bob.
Yeah, thanks. Looking at the business plan and around the LDP, obviously it's going to be extremely important over the next couple of years with us. And the consultations, it shows in the didn't work so well part of it regarding the consultation, but then it says high volumes of responses were received. Now, I feel that was probably because members pushed in their areas, and that a lot of the consultation process didn't work very well, basically citing the drop-ins and how it's communicated. I mean, I know we rely a lot on digital communication, but there are a lot of people out there that don't engage in digital communication. And I just wanted to kind of state, I think it will probably be very helpful in the future for consultations, any consultation really, to involve the local members to get a feel of where we need to do these things, timings of them, because it does give a perception sometimes that the authority is actually not trying to get the right feedback. They don't want to listen to that feedback. On the back of that, this wasn't part of this, but we are talking. Yesterday, I spoke to a resident who uses the buses all the time and wasn't aware or hadn't been able to get involved in a public consultation regarding the hub, the new transport hub. So again, I think that was something that maybe we could look at. I don't know, did we actually advertise a consultation on the buses? We did.
Yeah.
Did we put posters on the buses to?
I'd have to check. I'd have to check in as well.
Because
physically,
the thing is, in my mind, if the people using the hub and the buses are the people we're looking at, the first place we should have put those posters up is in the buses, so that they could read them as they were travelling. Because this guy who uses it all the time, he's an older resident, had no idea that the consultation was going on and asked me, could I get a form? And then I said, well, I'm sorry, consultation's closed April to June. So I just thought, I know we're looking then across the whole of the directorates, all consultations, but perhaps we could get together, maybe have a working group that we could work out better ways of doing these consultations.
We have got, as part of the LDP or our LDP process, we've got a community involvement strategy. So which is published, it should be on our website, and if you can't find it, I'll get somebody to send you the link. And that identifies what consultation in what form will be undertaken at each stage of the preparation and adoption process. So as part of that process, we did do sort of social media campaigns, as you've indicated. We did leaflets to every property in the county borough. We put site notices up outside all the candidate sites that have been put forward for consideration. We had leaflets in GP surgeries. We had things in local libraries. So we did quite a lot, and there was a list of all the actions that we took in that community involvement strategy. But we do appreciate that it didn't work as well as we wanted. What we're proposing to do. And in relation to the leaflets, you'd think if you were sending a leaflet to every single property in the county borough, that would reach people who are not on social media. But what actually happened is you employ a company to deliver those leaflets on your behalf, and it's bundled up with other leaflets, for takeaways and for double glazing or whatever. And it comes through people's doors, and they see a big bundle of leaflets and they chuck them in the bin. Or the recycling. I'd like to think they go in the recycling and then bin. So they don't actually read them. So they were, you know, so you think in theory they'd be effective, but in practice they weren't. So we're looking at different ways of doing it. So we're going to continue to do targeted social media campaigns. We're going to put posters up in public areas, and where you've got LCD screens, we go in to advertise them on there. We go in to put leaflets and posters in GP surgeries, hospitals, council offices, leisure centres, bus stops, transport hubs, community notice boards, and we're going to make them available for local elected members as well, so you can distribute. We're working already with the local area coordinators that work in social services, because they've got links in with local groups as well, so hopefully they can deliver the message for us. I know that there is a working group, there is the planning committee. I think everyone on the planning committee is on the RLDP working group. So we're hoping that sort of feedback from that group will improve the system. We do have all member seminars at key stages of the RLDP, and we want feedback from you guys as part of those seminars. And if there are any suggestions that members can come forward with to try and ensure we are engaging, because we do want to engage despite what the public think, because we don't know it all. Sometimes we are restricted in terms of what we can do because of the statutory process that Welsh Government have told us that we've got to follow. So, but we want to hear from people, and we want to be able to respond where we can. So if there are other ways that you think that we can do better, we want to hear that, and we want to sort of ensure that we hear the voices of the local people as well as the members. We've got to be careful with members in terms of predetermination, because we don't want to frustrate your ability to contribute to the LDP process all the way through. So we've got to have regard to that. But we, you know, any suggestions that you can come forward with which will help us, we're all ears.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you said about the members there, yes, we have to be neutral and predetermined, but we can help with setting up the consultation processes to make sure they work better.
Yeah,
that's what I feel we could do.
I know that we had at one point we had 8 meetings in 8 particular areas. So it's the spatial areas in the plan. So we've got 8 spatial areas, and we had public meetings, and nobody used. Well, I think one meeting, no one turned up, and in other meeting you just had a handful of people turning up. So you had officers sitting there waiting to engage, and we had a lack of public coming forward. So
but certainly what I found with that specific one relating to my ward, firstly it was held in Pontardawe when it related to Rose. And secondly, the timing of it meant that a lot of people who were working couldn't attend, and a lot of my residents who are retired and elderly couldn't make it there. So then there are 2 caveats of people that are being excluded straight away from those consultations.
If I may, you know, I've also on the bus consultation on the franchising and the new routes and whatever, point I made in that seminar was that the consultation is going to be in Pontardawe. You can't get to Pontardawe by bus. We are one of the, you know, the most, you know, the areas which have least access to cars, and you know, but we can't get to Pontardawe, so we can't contribute on that. And we're really grateful there's a bus route proposed, but you know, no one can get involved with that. So and again, you know, same with the RLDP. It's frustrating because people can't get to Pontardawe. And if you get to Pontardawe around the library, parking can be a problem if you do drive down. There are issues.
Do you have any drafts, Suzanne, on this point just before we?
Thank you, Chair, very much. On the same item on page 17, it says that you were criticised. Although you put out all of the information, you were criticised. Did any of the criticisms sort of come back in a way of, well, why didn't you do this? No, they just criticised. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
And as I say, we're open to ideas. I know that you know that Councillor Wilford said about, you know, in your ward, Rose, what we were trying to do is have a meeting in each of the spatial areas, and Pontardawe is the heart of that spatial area. Right? So that's probably why the officers chose that, because it was central to that particular spatial area. But I understand.
And I don't want to be negative about this, I want us to be positive, that we can
Yeah.
help it to be
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
That's the whole point,
Yeah.
I think.
I think it is more challenging in the rural areas as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Both giving examples
Yeah.
of where
Yeah.
it's
I
hard.
know Lana, who's the policy manager, she's more than happy to have discussions with any officers on what could work better and how we can then logistically respond to that. So, Lana wasn't able to come today, but she asked me to say, look, get in touch with her. We want your feedback. We want your helpful suggestions because we don't know it all ourselves.
Yeah, I can honestly say that Lan was tremendous with
It's
it.
very good. Yeah.
When I held my public meeting and we brought these things up, she helped me with all the information, all the forms and everything I needed, which then pushed obviously the consultation forward. So I can't criticize her for what she did, but then the process before let her down, I think, a little bit, because I visited Pontardawe to the drop-in, and she was saying, this, I wasn't thinking I'd be able to speak to her, but there weren't that many people there.
Yeah. That is really popular.
It's still not popular until it's going to impact on your home, your community, and then,
I think it's complicated for people as well, isn't it? I think, we can all be a bit nerdy about doing here sometimes, and we've been here a while. I mean, I've sat in the planning committee, and several of us have, and you're a planner, Nicola, when that's your background.
Nerdy, yeah.
So it's
That's true.
Yeah, self-confessed nerd as well. But it's that sort of thing, isn't it? We forget sometimes that it does, these things don't make any sense to your average person, and it is very hard to communicate what are really complex technical documents and the impact of them, how that affects a community is quite difficult, isn't it? And people, they get it when they go, a piece of land that doesn't be built on it, but actually understanding all of the considerations that need to be made around that is really tough.
And I think one of the things that caused even more confusion, which we've learned from, is the site notices that were put up on all of the candidate sites. The public thought that they were planning applications, so they were ringing the planning department wanting to know about that planning application. It wasn't a planning application; it was a candidate site.
Yeah.
So
used to seeing
and that happened when the original LDP went through the LDP process as well, and I was in DM then, and it was a flipping nightmare. So we're not going to do that again because it just caused more confusion. But we've got to find a different way of making sure that we are getting the information out there. So as I say, reiterate, if you want to have a chat about how we can improve, if you've got ideas, then we're all ears.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll just add from a scrutiny point of view, and I did let members know in the pre-briefing, there is some discussions ongoing, with Lana, and I know we're going to have some chats with Craig, and just to work out where scrutiny can kind of fit in, because we've got the working group from the planning committee. We don't want to duplicate anything. The seminars are working quite well as well, but I know there's members on this committee that want to contribute, and I'm one of them, as one of the planning nerds as well. And it's working out what we can do that positively contributes to that process. So we're having those conversations, and we'll just keep members updated on that as well. I've got a few questions. Anyone else got any questions they want to ask before I rattle through my list? I don't like to stop anybody else speaking too much. Okay, I'll crack on then. So one of the things I wanted to pick up, this one's probably for you, James, around passenger transport and the succession planning comment that was made there. And we've mentioned the bus services already, and it's a very big piece of work. It's a hot topic. It's quite critical, isn't it? So I picked that one out in particular, just to understand where we're at really with that succession planning concern, and also just the understanding of what skills we're going to need in that team over the next few years, because we're going to have a much bigger role now, aren't we, in the involvement of bus services. I mean, it's been increasing. I mean, since the pandemic. I mean, bless Brendan. I mean, he's had a lot of work to do since the pandemic. So I don't know if you've got anything on that, Jim.
Yeah, obviously Brendan's off as well for waking up in 2 weeks, so he's back on Monday. So I haven't just picked up on the last point. And so there's from in terms of the bus franchising seminar that was run the All Council Power Member seminar. We'll catch up with him next week. And we'll see what we can do in terms of
it's great, thank you.
Consultation events. But yeah, so I've got with Paul, and we've discussed around that part within the business plan, the new reference in terms of succession plan and new structure. So the new structure exercise was undertaken this year, and that was required as a result of the increase in work concerning local bus network changes, as we've alluded to. So obviously the move from a commercially viable network to support the network, and the changes also increased the number of local bus contracts from 30 to 42. So that was the requirement last year why we had to look to increase our resources. Additionally, obviously the bus bill and bus reform in Wales will amend the Transport Act, and this creates an opportunity for the passenger transport team to ensure local needs are met, and there's improvement and continuation of services as well linked to the bus franchising. And furthermore, the team needs to have the expertise as well, and the structure in place to ensure there's appropriate support and representation on the review programme, the homeschool travel service. That's another good example now going forward of where you can have that collaboration across different service areas. So the team has increased in the size. There's 2 additional posts. There's now more of a sort of like, there's ways for people to move through the team as well in terms of succession planning and improving their career. So that's been done. We'll continue to review it as and when the additional work comes our way. But we're in a far better place than what we were previously.
Oh, thank you. That is reassuring. I know I was aware of some of the work that has been going on in the background, but yeah, that is reassuring, because I think there's still a lot of uncertainty actually around the level of involvement we're going to have with some of this bus network work going forward. Certainly speaking to Brendan, it's sort of, Welsh Government and TFW kind of keep changing their mind a little bit of what they're doing, but I'm reassured that we've at least got our eye on that, and so thanks for that, James. The next question I had is one for Chris from the culture, leisure tourism, heritage and culture business plan. So that was in relation to the comments made around the culture strategy on pages, the first 3 pages of the report, pages 9, 10, 11 on our pack. So there's a mention there that there's no staff currently in post for the culture strategy. And then on the following page, it says the aim is that staff will be in place by the end of this financial year, in terms of alongside the Cultural Compact Steering Group. And then on the following page, it says there's no specific budget allocation to support the work stream within the team. So I'm wondering if you could explain a bit more around that, Chris. That seems like a bit of a problem to me, and I wonder where we're at with that one.
Yeah, so I mean the budget is difficult, isn't it? And we're about to enter another difficult budget round. So I sort of preface this with saying we're very grateful for what we've got, but to make real progress, I think, on the cultural strategy, and we have made some really good progress. Don't get me wrong, but we want to be really meaningful and make that real sort of place-making progress, and really make sure the cultural partnership, the compact, sort of is meaningful and delivers on a sort of a place-wide approach. We've had a first meeting on that actually, and there's some real energy from partners and an interest in getting together and really driving something that would be unique in Wales. It needs somebody to manage that and develop it and be the secretary of it and push it forward and do those sorts of things. So there isn't any council funding. There might be a little bit of match funding should we get some grants. We're quite good at getting grants. Carly sat there is fantastic at getting grants. We're in sort of extended discussion, I suppose, with Arts Council regarding a grant for a particular post, and I will be able to sort of say a bit more when we get that confirmed. And we had a really good discussion with some colleagues, some officers in Welsh Government earlier this week around how our aspirations meet their cultural priorities that they've just announced, and whether there's any money available there. Of course, it's usually capital funding, and not the revenue that we need. I've got a Clower Chief Leather Officers meeting in a little while after this, and I know that's on the agenda there as well. So we will continue to look for grant funding, and hopefully if we get some grant funding, there'll be a bit of match funding coming from the council to help us deliver that.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I think that does maybe slightly explain the conundrum a little. But that is a bit of a tough one, isn't it? Just on a similar vein, one of the things that I was wondering in terms of the strategies is the heritage strategy obviously was looked at adopted at the same time as the culture strategy, wasn't it? And there's not really a mention of pushing that forward in this business plan. So I was curious sort of where that is sitting in terms of, I know some of those actions are kind of being picked up across the council in different ways, but where does that feature really in terms of the strategy itself?
It's probably a fair cop, this one, actually, because when I saw the previous questions, I sort of thought to myself, like, maybe we haven't made quite enough of that within the service plan. Of course, the sort of the staffing element sits within Simon's area, so and the ownership of that, and there is reference to the heritage strategy in that in the regen plan, because I did have a quick look. But we probably need to be a bit better at just lining those things up. So we'll take that away and give that a bit of thought.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Chris. We did get into a bit of a confusion in the pre-brief, trying to work out where heritage was sitting.
Yeah.
When we were looking at the blue plaque report, because it was sort of a report of sort of Simon, and then I was thinking, oh right, okay, Chris is the heritage guy, and that's in education. So I think maybe there's a little bit of work to do there.
Yeah.
Listen, Carly's got a hand up. I don't want to come in before I bring Chris
In
back.
reality, we work really closely.
I know.
Day to day, really closely. It doesn't come across on paper, and that's certainly something we can look at. I think the plans are set out as service plans.
Yeah.
So obviously we need to be mindful of not putting something in our plan that's actually delivered by Simon's team. It's just we've got to be clearer about making those connections.
Yeah, and I think from my point of view, it was just making sure that we don't end up with a gap where actually, you know, a lovely plan with lots of nice ambitions isn't being picked up because of that maybe slightly unclear level of responsibility. So, Chris,
just to add to that, we have got a heritage strategy. I don't know what we call it now, whether it's not a working group anymore. Is it a sort of a group that we do sit together on quite a regular basis? Both Simon and I attend that. Councillor Phillips attends that, and a number of other officers do. So there is that coordination going on. Just to assure you, it's just as Carly said, it's not probably quite as clear on the paper as perhaps how we might deliver it.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Simon.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you know, we talked about collaboration earlier, and this is a sort of a product of that, really. If you look at the council and the width of the things that it provides, you cannot clearly define these things.
No.
It's just impossible. You will always have a number of directorates providing the skills that they've got to deliver something and be involved in those projects. So naturally, for a number of areas, not just in heritage, but a load of things, you know, I got technical guys, for instance, who will creep into a lot of things across the authority, because that's what they do. They support other services in their delivery. So I think it's just part of that, really. And of course, when you have a business plan, then it's quite hard to articulate all of the collaboration you're doing, because they ask you for some examples. So that's what we give.
Yeah,
some examples. Otherwise, your business plans would be probably about a week long for you to read them, and you'd be very bored. And we'd probably take us half the year to write them. So yeah, that's where we end up.
Yeah, I think, I know, just to round it off, I think from my point of view, you know, Chris, I know, was very involved with the heritage strategy itself, and I think that's perhaps where it, for me, when I'm looking at sort of Chris's document, that the heritage strategy wasn't sort of sitting there. But I think you've all kind of explained kind of how we've got to that point, and you know, perhaps in the next iteration of these plans, it'll just be a little bit clearer. So that's absolutely fine. Again, reassured, we like that. So the last point is for me to make a couple of comments about Abrav and Seafront, which members will know is my ward. And just to pick up on a couple of things. Firstly, just on a positive note, really pleased to see the actions in the business plan around the operating pattern for the seafront, in terms of picking up issues around maximising revenue, improving how it runs, reducing antisocial behaviour. you know, it's communication forums, coordination, prioritization. These are all things that I've been harping on about forever, and Chris knows all too well. So really pleased to see those in here. And I know there's work been going on in the background, a lot of discussions that, you know, hopefully is going to come forward. The one thing that I wanted to pick up specifically today, though, is around the master plan for the seafront. And where we're at in terms of picking out prioritization of the projects, because I know that was originally scoped to the consultants and then de-scoped from the consultants for us to do. And it just says ongoing. So I'd love to know kind of where we're at with that. Chris, if that's it with you.
We haven't sat down and had a good look through it at this stage. That is to do at some stage. I think the reason I put it down as ongoing is because we can prioritize a few, and then we might want to do a few more, and then we might want to do a few more. So I didn't really see it as an end thing. I didn't see it as a piece of work that's done once and then done. So I wanted to sort of see it was something that we carried on sort of doing as funding streams come up and as we react to whatever might be out there. There is I'm not sure quite where we are with the Naval Club, actually. Simon might be able to help with that one. I know that with an SPF, there is some feasibility funding for the Timor site that's been made available. So there are a few things that are going. We just haven't sort of sat down and put a list together. If that makes sense, we do need to do that.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that, Chris. I think from my point of view, it's going to be a moving picture, but we kind of need to do the initial bit of work, don't we? And I think certainly for us as members, for the public to understand, okay, well, what are our initial 5 priorities? What projects are we going to put forward for those funding opportunities? And yeah, for me, it's not clear whether we're going to go for the toilets by the whale or the team oversight first. And you know, it's that sort of thing, isn't it? That we need to kind of understand what are we saying is urgent, what are we saying is lessons. I got loads of hands up from officers. Darren, do you know, or Carly?
I would say often it can be quite hard to prioritise about what you're going to go for first, because the funding streams often dictate what gets done first. So just putting that one.
I do get that.
Yeah.
I get that, but from a tourism fund, Brilliant Basics, for example, you know, that's the sort of thing you could put to a lot of projects actually, and we do need to kind of have that conversation that we have.
The number one priority for members was nailing the team oversight and where that's going. So that's why that was identified by the regeneration team as well as a priority for SPF, getting the feasibility sorted around where we go with it.
Simon?
Yeah, it's just reiterating what Carly said, really. I mean, they're always difficult. If you prioritise your things 1 to 10, and then they say, well, why have you dealt with number 10? Yeah. So, well, because they can get funding for 10, but 1 to 9, not possible, sorry. And people often ask us why we do, you know, why have you done the theatre?
Yeah.
Why didn't you do a school? And you say, well, that's not, and we always say, we should put something online that says, this is how funding works, you know, because it is hard to explain to people why you do something when something else over there looks like it's in disrepair or, you know, probably could have more attention, and you will inevitably get that on the seafront as well. You are going to do some things that people are going to go, why have you done that? I just do not understand it. But that's the nature of funding.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that's come out of the plan, isn't it, is we've actually got a very long list of things we could do down there. There's a lot of opportunities, and actually, if we're being honest, there's lots of things that need fixing as well. And that is a challenge. And it's like, you fix one, why haven't you fixed the other thing yet? But yeah, I'll re-stress. I'll caveat it. I get the point that we will always have to respond to funding, but even within that envelope, within those funding opportunities, there's going to be 5 or 6 schemes actually you could pick, even on the seafront for some of those projects. And there probably needs to be a discussion involving local members as well to go through that plan and have a real serious discussion. Okay, this is actually a short-term project. This is going to cost. This is about a £50,000-60,000 scheme. We could deliver that quite quickly. This is a £10 million scheme. That's a long-term project. We haven't really sat down and had those discussions. And
the bit of information that we're missing is the costing of those schemes.
Yeah.
The bit we took out because of money.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's the detailed. I suppose what we can do as officers once we meet, and I know there's a structure proposed for how we go forward in terms of delivery and the operational groups and things. What we can do is look at how which projects get prioritised to take through that full spec. However, the council needs to find the money to get those projects up to full spec,
Absolutely.
ready to deliver. Yeah.
No, appreciate. I think I've well made my point there, so I'll leave it there because the thing is when you're the chair, there's no one to stop you, is there? That's the problem.
Yeah.
No, sorry, I just wanted to say, what a great environment to work in. Where else in the world would you hear the comment, are we going to deal with the toilets by the whale? Can you imagine being a fly in the wall?
Stranger things have been said in this committee, but we've got Teletubby toilets as well. So.
Well, we tell the consultant, and the consultants on the seafront, and we're like, don't touch the whale. And when we're talking about Teletubby toilets, they're like, what universe are we in?
Yeah. Oh, right. Sorry.
Sonia. Yeah. No. You've triggered something for me with
go ahead.
And all of this, and it links into things that Nicola said earlier and whatever. Yeah, we've been able to work in communities that we've not been able to work in before, which is much appreciated. For some of us who haven't had that access before, but in 2019, you've got a beachfront plan, etc. In 2019, we had a values plan, and we had a set of projects, things that could run. Does anything like that exist anymore? Have we got anything? Because that would be nice to see as well, so that when you're looking at funding, there are, this could really make an impact, this can be done quickly, that can be done quickly, because most of the stuff, that we get done in the valleys at the moment is because we go, wait, excuse me, so it would be nice to see that done on a wider basis, or at least going back to that and, updating it.
I'll start, and perhaps Simon can pick up anything further that I've missed or misinformed you on. We're currently preparing an economic development and regen strategy, which we want to cover the whole of the county borough. So we don't want to differentiate between the coastal corridor and the valleys, because they're all important. So we've had some consultant support on that, and I think we're probably about a month or two away from taking it through the cabinet process, or the scrutiny process and the cabinet process. And that, attached to that, we are hoping to have a pipeline of projects, as well as identifying where the opportunities are. So that will be coming before members in the not too distant future, to ensure that we are responding to need across the county borough and not being focused on one particular area. And I know it was part of the manifesto, or the commitments that the cabinet wanted to deliver during their term, to ensure that we are focusing on the valleys as much as we are focusing on the coastal corridor. So that is in train.
Has there been any discussion with members?
In terms of the economic development regen strategy, we've had consultation events, haven't we?
Yeah, for certain things like the place plans and all those sort of things as well.
Yeah.
What we will do is absolutely right. This is going to be more of a holistic document than we've had before. Before, we've had economic development plans, we've had regeneration plans, but as people will know, they're inextricably linked, really, and we need to deliver them together. I think it's interesting. I was asked to do a presentation to SLT this week, and they'll never have to be back again, because 3.5 hours later,
slides,
they were still there.
And Jared looked as if he'd been through the mill.
Yeah, I absolutely bored them into submission. But what it does give is a real detail of everything that's happened. And you are right that a lot of it happened along the coastal corridor for a long, long time, because that's where Welsh Government funding was directed. And it's been really a town centre first policy for almost as long as I can remember. It'll be interesting that, as you said, under SPF, we were able to get up into the valleys. We're doing things like, we built the units in Nanta Cavern and things like that. All funding we've never had anything, it's never been available to us for a long, long time. So if that continues, we can start to continue to deliver things in the valley areas. There is quite a reasonable potential that Welsh Government get their hands on it, and it goes back into the previous policies, and we can't go and do those things. So we will have to wait and see how that pans out, and that comes back to the discussion we had earlier around the funding. But I think certainly we don't differentiate between valleys and the coastal belt. It's just the funding that
I
takes it
understand.
that
It's
way.
just if there's, if it would be nice to see, ready-made things waiting in case the money comes available.
We'll be bringing that to members, as Nick said, pretty soon. It'll go through our processes internally in terms of going through SLP, through government briefing, and then on to scrutiny members then for comments as well.
I'm just quite aware though, when the placemaking meeting happened in Potsdam, once I couldn't get there because I was in other meetings, but it was also, very, very much a case of my ward colleague came back and said that was all about Swansea Valley. It was really hard getting anything, further out. So
I think with the place plans, there's been a bit of a misunderstanding as to what a place plan is, and we did identify this to Welsh Government when they first brought raised the concept, because a place plan fits into the hierarchy of plans and planning. So you've got your strategic development, you've got your Future Wales, which is the national plan, you've got your strategic development plans, then you've got your replacement local development plans, then you've got place plans. Right? So it's that hierarchy of plans. But then they've introduced now place plans under economic development in the region. And what those place plans are a vehicle for authorities to apply for grants of up to £300,000 to do projects within these places that fit with the vision of that place. So it's caused a lot of confusion. So we've got to have these place plans in place to enable us to draw down that funding. So, and hopefully, as we roll more of these place plans out, it'll give us access to funding to actually do projects within those areas. So it's going to be a longer story. We've only just started it, a longer journey, I should say.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Sonia. Right, I've got no other indications on the business plans. So I'm just going to double check. These are monitoring reports, so we will note those reports. I'll just take us on to item 6 now, which is our forward work programme. We did have a discussion on this in the pre-brief in quite some detail, and actually the regeneration economic strategy is listed as one of the ones that we're trying to programme in. For members' information, so the forward work programme as published is included in the agenda pack, but there's been a few updates, isn't there, Tom? I don't know if we want to just quickly run through.
Yeah, so I've had some discussions with Nicola and Chris and Andrew Thomas, Director Education. So there's a few more reports that we now know about that we didn't know about previously, which are coming shortly. So I need to go back to the office just to confirm these, but for the 31st of October, it's looking like the reports that we'd like to pull would be the active travel delivery plan, Pontardawe swimming pool, the library's annual report, and also the bus franchising update and bus network. So they should fall in line with where they're supposed to be going in order to cabinet, but I'll just have to confirm that with officers and check all the dates work. But those were all ones that we were keen on originally, and it looks as though they're now starting to come on the cabinet forward work programme. In terms of other bits of business that the committee were keen on, I've had discussions with Chris Saunders about Pontardawe Arts Centre site visit at some point in the future, although that is a little bit further away at the moment, so no definitive date, but it's on the agenda. Margam Castle workshop, which we'd probably end up tying into the end of 2025 or early 26, but that's dependent on discussions that Chris is having externally. And also you'll be aware that we also have a workshop on the 22nd with Celtic Leisure for the CEO to come in to talk to us about his plans. And we've also got an additional workshop as well for consultation in relation to the theatre. So we've managed to cram some things in, and as the chair said, there's a few other reports that we're keen to add to the forward work programme, but we need to have discussions with officers and when the work is actually ready, in fairness. So yes, we're progressing.
Thanks Tom for that. Yeah, so there's a lot more skills programming, and I've got some meetings coming up with officers, and probably have a chat with some of the cabinet members as well over the next few weeks, just to try and firm up some more of those. As usual, members, if there's any items you want us to look at as a committee, just contact me, let me know. You can contact James as well, or Tom. So I'll move on now to just say I have no urgent items, and to close the meeting for today. Thank you very much, everyone.
Nice visit. Thank you.
Yes,